afternoon. Like non-stop seeing me. Okay. Alright, we're gonna do your catch-up, so-called to look back into what we covered in first term. Okay. See, I can't cover everything of what we covered in first term in just 6 hours. Okay. Then if like that, we are cheating the first term student. Alright. Now I just want to let you know that where we've covered. Okay. So probably when you come in that time, alright, when you come in that time, so you will be probably around chapter 8. Okay. So some probably move in earlier or what, I'm not sure, but we can say that in the first term we've covered chapter 1 to 7. Okay. Now so I will only look through the more important area, okay, the more important area, and I will look through important area, especially those that we have a change. Okay. Now see, this coming exam, we're gonna use budget 2013. Alright, so for your December and June exam, we apply budget 2013. See, the good news of budget 2013, it's not much of changes. Alright, so whatever we do at the beginning, really there's not much, and quite a number of change are coming at the back. That means when we're going to do incentive, then that's where you're going to see a few more changes coming. Okay, and in fact there are some incentive proposed, just that because the law was not gazetted on time, so it will not be in this syllabus also. For example, like venture capital. Okay, so there are incentive for investment in venture company, so the deduction rule and stuff like that, they propose something, but then it will never be in. Okay, so these are those things. So we're gonna see using the handout. Alright, so I prepare a handout that we're gonna use for this class and the following Monday. Okay, now see, the syllabus has a small amendment, so they have changed by included a topic called change of accounting date, which is to do with basis period. Alright, so this used to be topic in F6. Okay, used to be topic in F6. Now remember that there was an incident that happened, I think 2 or 3 sittings back. Okay, that when F6 examiners set a question on change of accounting date, and then Miss Yong was some kind like objected to that question and say, how come you set a question like that for F6 student? But it was a very straightforward question. Then the F6 examiner said, but it's okay, it's in the syllabus. So probably from that time onward, maybe Miss Yong felt that she wanted that thing to be here. So now they change the syllabus by moving up from F to P. That's all. Okay, so we're going to cover on this. Okay, now the first issue that I'm going to look through with you is on resident status. So the same old thing. Okay, now see, resident status is definitely important in tax, because it's a lot of so-called consideration is given depending on whether you're a resident or not. Like, do you get tax relief, what kind of tax treatment. Okay, now so when we look at the person, okay, the different type of chargeable person that we cover in P6. Now seriously, there's only 3. Okay, there's only 3 different person that we cover in P6. Now 1, we cover individual. The other one is company. Now one more person is trust. Okay, so trust is a chargeable person, and trust include an ordinary trust. Okay, so generally all trust is trust, Unit trust is also trust. Real estate investment trust is also a trust. They are all trust. A charity is also a trust. But just that you don't learn charity now in the syllabus. Okay? Now they're trust. Trust is a person. Okay? Now, see, but the resident status for trust, the determination is a bit different. So we will learn when we come to the trust chapter, which is tonight. Okay? So we're gonna see this. How do you determine resident status for trust? Now that's why all the while we also never tell the student about trust first. Okay? Now, so there's only left with individual company. Alright? Now to determine resident status of individual, we will refer to section 7 of the Act, which is what we learn in the low level. Okay? Now, and company, we refer to section 8 of the Act. Alright? Now, so what we see here in section 7 of the Act, to determine the status, resident status of individual, is we usually look at the quantitative test, right? Correct enough? So there will be some quantitative tests, which is based on calculating number of days that a person, an individual, is in the country. Okay? Now, so if you recall back, so very quickly, then we look at example. Okay, if you recall back, under section 7.1, okay. Now, how can individual be a resident in Malaysia? Now, 1A says that, this is 1A, alright, 7.1A says that you must be present in Malaysia for what? At least 182 days. Okay, now I use the word at least 182 is easier lah, so you don't make mistake. Okay, the law uses 182 days or more, right? So 182 days means at least 182 lor. So you can be at least 182, you can be more than 182 also, never mind, because you use at least means minimum. Okay, now but when we calculate that you must be in the country for X number of days, so what do you mean by in the country for a day? So that's why the law also added a further definition and say, when you determine a day in Malaysia, part of a day that you're in Malaysia is deemed as one full day you're in Malaysia. Right now? So that's how we calculate the number of days. So we just look at, are you in the country physically for 182 days? Now, if yes, you become resident. Okay? Now, this is A. A is straightforward. We just look for minimum 182. Now, the more difficult one is 7.1b. Alright? Now, the law in 7.1b works in this way. You need to determine your resident status by borrowing from another year. Correct enough? Okay, so the rule works by borrowing from another year. Now, if in a year you don't have 182, okay, so that's why you must see that you are not having, there's no 182 day in such a year. Okay, you don't have 182. Now, when you don't have 182, you can't use A, right? Okay, but then such period is linked by or to another period of 182 consecutive days. Now, the period that you have in the year, which is not 182, but you link. So the idea of link here means you borrow from your neighbor. Follow? Okay? You borrow from your neighbor. Understand? Huh? So you just think of borrowing from your neighbor. Now, so your neighbor must have 182 consecutive days. Now, of course, when you talk about a neighbor, so which is your neighbor? Now, the neighbor can be at the left or at the right of you, right? You see, no? So that's why it depends on, if you look at your stay statistics, are you in the beginning or are you at the end of the year? Now, let's say I'm here in 2012 and we are in the country at the beginning of the year. Okay, so assuming that there is a 60 days over here. Now since I'm here at the beginning of the year, the nearest for me to borrow is from 2011, fair enough, because I'm here right at the beginning. So the nearest for me to borrow is from 2011. So how do you borrow? Now the idea of borrow is you must have them connected. So to connect means you just look for the physical days that they're connected. Now for example, if you're in the country from this period all the way till the end, they are connected. Now this allows us to borrow. Okay, this allows us to borrow. Okay, now but when you borrow, you must remember the period that you borrow must have 182. So let's say the blue color that I've drawn here, I tell you that we only have 120. Okay, I put more days, 128. Okay, now so I'm using the 128 as a period that I link by. This is called link by. Okay, link to means you borrow from the next year. Follow? Now, so I only borrow 128. The law needs me to have 182. That means you have not enough days. Understand now? Now when you borrow, you don't add yourself. You have a 60 days here, but you will not take that into account. So that's why you cannot take the 60 and add 1 to it and say I have 182. You don't have 182 because looking at the period that you borrow, you only have 128. Now with 128 you still fail. Okay, but in the law also they did mention that, let's say for example in 2011, besides the 128, we have another 50 days. Okay, we have another 50 days. Now these 50 days can help us in adding up into the 182 or not. Now by just looking at this situation, the answer is no, because the law uses the word, yes, consecutive. So when they use the word consecutive means you must be joined together. Consecutive is there's no gap, right? You must join together, but unfortunately they don't join together. There's a gap. Okay, by having a gap doesn't stop us to form the 182 day, because in the law there's another provision that uses what? Temporary absent. Okay, say no? Now, so if this period that you're not in the country falls into permitted temporary absent, okay, it must be permitted. That means it must be allowed in the law. Okay, say not? So if permitted temporary absent, then the good news is you will then assume that this whole period that you are not in, you assume that you are in, and then you check how many days are there. So let's say the period that you're not in, which is now a form of permitted absent, comes up to 40 days. Let's say 40. Now, so with that 40 days, you just have to put yourself an imagination. Is just imagine the orange color that we highlight here. You're in the country. So if you imagine that you're in the country, that means how many days are you in the country? For 2011 is 50, 40, 128. So it becomes 200 over days, right? Now you are able to borrow 200 over days. You only need to borrow 182. So in that case, for 2012, yes, I become a resident by virtue of 1B. Okay? Now, so this is how the temporary absent can be used to help us to form temporary absent. Okay? Now, this temporary absence issue, okay, this TA issue, you can use them in 2011 or 2012, let's say. It doesn't, you can use them in any of the year, doesn't matter. And in fact, you can even have it overlapping 2 years. That means they are actually forming the bridging of the 2 year, also can. That means if let's say for example that this is 2012 and 2013. Now, I'm in the country for 2 very short period in both respective years. Now let's say this period I'm in the country for 30 days and this period I'm in the country for 25 days. Just 30 and 25. See, but with 30 and 25, 1A is out of the question. So we're going to use 1B. Now 1B says that if your period can link to or by another period, but you can't link with this big gap, you see. Now unless you show to me that from here all the way until here, that these are permitted temporary absent. See, they overlap 2 years. Then it makes a difference now that you can imagine the whole period is connected. Now once the whole period is connected, then there's a link. And once there's a link, you must check the period that you borrow got how many days. So you must know how many days you have here. Now let's say for example, I tell you this is 160. Okay, this is, let's say for example, 150. Now 160 and 150. So if you look at 160 and 150, then if you look at 71B, okay, for purpose of 71B, now Y2012, 71B, fulfill or fail? Fulfill or fail? You must see the period you borrow, right? So when you borrow, you look at your neighbor, right? You don't look at yourself, your neighbor. That means the neighbor will start from here, right? All the way until the end of the physical day. So 150 plus 25 is 175 only. Now you must have 182, right? So the answer is no. Okay, you can borrow, but just that the period you borrow is not enough. So you still fail. Now, but on the other hand, if you look at YA2013, if I look at 1B again, now same thing, I'm going to borrow. See, this time 2013 will borrow from 2012. So when you borrow from 2012, you need 182 also, right? Now since this is permitted absent, so you assume you're in the country. So when you count, you will count from here, the end of the year, all the way to the front. Okay? Now that will give us 190. Now you just need 182. Then in that case, yes, so you turn resident for 2013. Follow? Now, so that's the facts on how you determine 71B. Okay? Now there are quite a number of conditions that we can use to form temporary absent. Okay? Now I just tell you which part of the law, okay, and then you just go back and read through. Okay? Now so the TA part, you can read from page 1. Okay? So just read page 1. Issue concerning TA. Okay? Right. We look at 1C. Okay? Now, see 1C, we need 2 conditions. Okay, we need 2 conditions to make you a resident. Now what's the first condition we need in 1C? Now for the year in question, okay, for the respective year that you want to determine your resident status, you must be in Malaysia for at least 90 days. So that particular year itself, you must have 90 days. Now when you have 90 days for that particular year, okay, then you look for the second thing. Now the second thing is you must check for any 3 out of 4 year of assessment that's immediately preceding that YA, you either a resident or in Malaysia for at least 90 days. Now it's either. That means the 3 out of 4 can be a mixture of any. Can see not? It can be a mixture of any. Now, as long as any tree for the last 4 years, you have any tree either resident or 90 days, enough. Okay, but don't forget you must have first of all 90 days for that year in question. Now, so if you're going to show them in the diagram, it will be like this. Okay. Now let's say I'm deciding my resident for 2013. So 2013, I want to know, am I a resident? So if I want to know 2013, then I call 2013 as the year in question. So the year that I want to determine is my year in question. Now, do you have 90 days for 2013? So that's the first thing you check. Now, so I tell you that in 2013, I have 60 day, 50 day. So 110. Okay, good. First condition fulfilled. Now, once first condition fulfilled, you look for the last 4 years. Okay. Now, you may not need to even look at all the 4 years if you already have the last 3 years fulfill the condition. But you don't have it, go for up to 4 years. Okay. Now look at the last 4 years. So let's say for 12, 11, 10, and 9. Okay. Check your resident status. Now, if I tell you that if you're R, and R, let's say, enough idea, correct enough? Because once you have any of the three that you're resident, plus that year you have 90, you become resident already. Okay. Now, but of course, if you don't have all the 3 year become resident. Now let's say the status is like this. NRR. You only have 2 instead of 3. Okay, for those that you're NR, never mind. You check the days. Okay, you check the days. Now those that you are, the days are not important already because you're already a resident. You see now? Now, so now I tell you the days that you're in Malaysia. Okay, the days that you're in Malaysia. Now, so this 09, let's say you have 94 days. Now let's say the 2010, I give you the days also. Let's say you have 10 days. Okay, 50 days, 200 days. Now, so the 3 out of 4 that I need will be these 2 years that I'm already a resident. So the days are not important, you see that? See, I purposely put a 10 days here, but it doesn't matter. You don't say, oh, 10 days only is not 90, it's okay. We just want resident. Now, 2 years, we have it. Now, the 3rd year, I don't have resident, then I might look for the days. Now, this one, 50 cannot. But this is 94. This one, you have minimum 90. So this one fulfill. So you've got 3 out of 4 fulfilled. So with that 3 out of 4 fulfilled, then 2013, you become resident by virtue of 1C. Okay, that's how you determine 1C. Okay, the last rule is D. Now, we normally call D as a deemed resident status. Okay, because we don't really need to look at the number of days. Right, let's say these are the years that I'm looking at. Okay. Now, 2013, I want to know if I'm a resident. Okay, 2013, I want to know if I'm a resident. Okay, I tell you in 2013, I'm in the country for 20 days. For the 3YA before 2013, I'm all resident. Now look at this pattern here in D and C, they have quite close similarity. They are R. Okay, so sometimes it will get students to confuse and say, oh, you become resident by way of 1C, because you see the last 3 years all resident. But don't forget, C must have 2 conditions, right? The first condition is what? You must have 90 days. This is only 20. So if 20 means you will never be able to use 1C unless you tell me this is 120. Okay, that may be different. You know? So that's why if this is only 20, you can't use C as well because you don't have 90 days for that year. Okay, so in that case, your last hope is D. Now D is, as long as the last 3 years you've been a resident, you wait until the following year. Okay, if the following year of assessment you turn into resident, so that's why normally I call this as the 2R plus 1R rule. Okay, so the last 3 years you've been resident, and you waited the following year you turn resident. Once you've got that, 2013 become resident by virtue of 1B. That's why the days are not important. Even this one, 0 days also you become a resident. Hold on, okay? Now the only thing that you can't be is you cannot have 90. Because once you have 90, you become 1C, right? Because you're not. So that's why 0 to 89 is what we're seeing here. Follow? Now these are the rule on how you determine status, resident status for individual. Now besides 7.1, okay, besides 7.1, A, B, C, D. Now there is one more provision in the law that deals with also a deeming provision, 7.1 capital B, that you can see them in page 2. Okay, you can see them in page 2. Now I just tell you what is this. You just go back and read. Okay. Now, see, 7.1 capital B is for those cases that we have Malaysian that our government send them overseas to work. Our government. I mean, these are people working with the government. So that's why they're employed in public service. Then our government say, okay, you go overseas. For example, work in embassy. All right, work in embassy, you go overseas. Now, because you're working with the government and you're a citizen, even though you're working outside, you're not in the country. Not only working, even you go outside overseas to study, that you're not in the country, but we still deem that you become a resident. Okay, now that is the deeming provision, a special case for who? For government servant. Okay, otherwise you just go back and read yourself. Okay, now we look at the example here in my handout. Okay, now my numbering is not relevant. Okay, so there's some other numbering here. You just look at the number. This is 359. Okay, now see, they want us to determine resident status for J from year of assessment 06 to 12. Okay, now J first arrived in Malaysia on 16 June 2006 to take up an employment in Malaysia, and now they've given us the state statistics. So 26 all the way to 2012, that they gave us number of days. Now they also mentioned the reason why he was not in the country. Now absence from 11 August 07 to 29 December 07 for a long holiday in America. Okay, so 2007, towards the end of the year, here there's a long holiday. Now, going for a holiday can be taken as social visit. Okay, and social visit is one of the reasons that we take as temporary absent. But then the rule about social visit is what? Maximum we allow 14 days as temporary absent. Now this one's so long, from August all the way to December, so chances is it will not apply. Okay, okay, then absence from 1st of January to 3rd of April is for service matters. Now if it's for service matters for work in Malaysia, now this is already temporary absent. Okay, so from January to April, that's temporary absent. Now this one, there's no time limit, so you go for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, also no issue, so it's still temporary absent. Now absence from 20th of May 08 to 8th of January 09 is for overseas study, which is required by the employer, so it's to do with the employer, which is also a temporary absent. Okay, so the study is connected with the service. And then he returns to Malaysia, and before leaving again to continue the study from 31st December to 4th January 2012. So he came back and then he left again. Alright, now it is a temporary absent. Okay, it is a temporary absent. But if you notice the last period that he left the country, from 2010 to 2012, that we can see 10 to 12, the period that he has been out from Malaysia is covering up to 3 different years: 10, 11, 12. The TA that we allowed the most is overlap 2 years. So the moment you overlap 3 years, that means you skip 1 year totally not in the country, you cannot apply the TA. Can see not? So it can be a TA, but just that the TA now is not permitted. Can see not? So for the second part, this is not a permitted temporary absent. Okay? So determine his status. J. Now we're gonna use A, B, C, D to work out the status. Starting from 6 to 12. Okay. Now the first year is quite obvious. 73 plus 113 is 186. Now J is a resident by virtue of 1A. Okay. Now 2007. Now if you look at the number of days, 95 plus 2, that's 97. So it's not a resident by virtue of 1A. Okay, then you got to use 1B now. Now to use 1B, then you must check. You got to borrow. So either you borrow from 2006, you borrow from 2008. Now if you want to borrow, you must see if there's a link. Okay. Now so from 2006 to 2007. Now why is J not in the country? Is it given? Is it told? No, right? They only tell us that 11 August to 29 December he went for a holiday. So that's 07. So from 6 to 7, you don't know what's the reason why he was not in. That's why 6 to 7 you can't use temporary absent. So they are out already. Okay. So the choice now is 7 to 8. Now to use 7 to 8, then I will start from December. Okay, I don't have to look at the one before that, because as long as I have 1 day to form the link to borrow in already. So I'll start from December, the 2 day. Now this 2 day, can I join with 08? Now why I'm not in is because I'm going for a service matter, and the service matter is temporary absent. So in that case, I can assume that we are in. Now if you assume that we are in, that means 2008, right from the beginning of the year, you're present, assumed to be present all the way until 19 July. So if you're present from 1st January to 19 July, that's already like 6.5 months. Okay, so that's already enough to form 1A2. So I become a resident using 1B. Now 2008, see in 8 I have just 107 day, so I can't use A. Now we're going to use B here. Again, we need to see if we can borrow from the neighbor. Now if I want to borrow, now just now I've used 7, borrow from 8. Can I use 8 borrow from 7? Can. 8 borrow from 7 is through the link. Now there's a link. Okay, there's a link because of the TA. But this TA is all the way until 30th of December. After 30th of December, there's another gap before you reach August. Now the gap to reach August is because of the holiday, which is already exceeding 14 days. Now once you exceeded 14 days, that means you only take 14. So if you only take 14 days, you think and see 14 plus these 2 days is only 16 days. You don't have 182 to borrow. Okay. Now you can't borrow from 07. Now if you can't borrow 07, then borrow from 09. Now to borrow from 09, then you must know the reason why you're not in. Now is there any reason given from 8 to 9? They didn't mention why you're not in after 19 July. Okay, so they only mentioned why you're not in at the beginning. So in that case, find my period. 20th of May 08. I think the date is not right. 19th of July 08, sorry. Can we change this? 19th of July 08. To 8th of January, correct? And then he returns December. Okay, alright. Now, so the date is given, sorry. Now, so from the 19th of July 08 all the way to 8th of January is again for study, so which is TA, but then this TA is until 14. So the 14, then there's a gap, so you don't have enough 182 because April is just about 4 months, so you can't use this for B. Now for 2008, you want to use C, you must have at least 3 years in the past. It's only 2 years for us, so C is not possible, and D is not possible as well. Okay. Now 2009, see for 2009, you have just 96 days. So again, you fail A as well. Now we can try to use B for 2009. Now to use B, there again you must see if there's any link, there's any TA. Now again you can see that 19th of July until 8th of January is because of the study. So that's where the link comes in. So if there's a link comes in, you are connected all the way until April of 2008. Now April of 2008, that's about nearly 9 months already. Okay, so you have 182 there, so you become a resident. Now 2010 is very obvious, 364 days, you become resident by virtue of 1A. Now 2011, you're not in the country at all, so you can't use A or B or C. Now you want, you can just use D, but D must have 3R plus 1R. So you only have 2R here. So 1 more year, you are not resident. So it's impossible that D will come in. So you're a non-resident. Now 2012, 165, you can't use A. Now there's no B for us because you're not in the country at all for the whole year in 11. So TA cannot apply. Now if I want to use 71C, then I must have 90 days for that year. Now I have 90 days in that year, is 165. Then we must look for 3 out of 4. So the 3 out of 4 will be these last 4 years that we see. Now in the last 4 years, 8, 9, 10, 11, we already have 2 of the year we are resident. So 1 year here, 1 year here. Now with the other 2 years that we are non-resident. Now being a non-resident, you must check the days. Now how many days we are here in 11? 11 is 0 day only. So 0 day is insufficient. Now 2008, you have 107 day, which you have at least 90. So this one fulfilled it. So 1, 2, 3. Now that's where the 3 out of 4 comes in. So yes, you become a resident. Okay. Right. So these are the example to illustrate. All right, how we apply the resident status for individual. Okay. Now, see, to determine resident status of company. Okay. So just quickly lah. Okay. Now, section 8 look at management and control. You have to exercise them in Malaysia, then you become resident. Okay. Now all the while we know is management and control. See, what do you mean by management and control? So you must look at who has the power in a company that has the authority to manage and control the company. Now we know that the power reserved with the director. So that's why all the while in cases, they treat management and control as the board of directors meeting. Okay? So usually for a simple way of determining your status, we just look at the location of your BOD meeting. So if your location is in Malaysia, then we agree that management and control is exercised in Malaysia, and then we agree that the company will turn resident. Okay. Now, of course, a simple way is we just look at management and control by way of location of the board of directors meeting. Okay. Now, but because of the advancement of technology, that things become globalized, borderless, we now see there are a lot of arrangement whereby we can have local directors in Malaysia. At the same time, we got overseas director, and when they do board of directors meeting, they can do it by way of video conference. They may not need to all come together, because so that's why when you have those cases that you have appointment of local director, so that's where you must be extra careful that if you have local director in Malaysia, now let's say at the same time you have foreign directors as well. Now with both local and foreign directors, what they do is now they do video conferencing for board of directors meeting. Okay, so by way of video conferencing, some is in Malaysia, some they are not in Malaysia. So the question now is, in that case, do you still regard management and control? See, the law never used the word the place of the directors meeting. We use the word place of directors meeting is because it's in the case law. That all the while in the past, we know that when directors meet, that's where the power is being exercised. But that's because in the past you don't have this sort of thing called video conference, because but now things change already. So once things change, you must look back into the whole intention. We are still looking at the power to manage and control. So when you have this kind of situation, then you must ask yourself effectively, where is the power being retained? So if the power of making decision, the management and control is still retained in Malaysia, then of course you still regard that as resident. But if let's say the power is retained overseas, then again it will not be resident. Okay, so that's why when you have this sort of situation, you got to check. Where is the power to make decision being retained? Is it in Malaysia or is it outside? If it's still in Malaysia, then you can say it's a resident company. If it's outside, then it becomes a non-resident company. Okay. Now, so that's a bit on the resident status issue. Okay. So I'll look at the example here in 360 to do with basis period. Okay. That's the new things the examiner added to the syllabus. Alright, now see when you set basis period for a year of assessment, now you got to know the rule. See, all the while we learn individual company. All the while, okay? That's what we learn. Now, if you read the law, actually the law group company as well as cooperative society and trust as one. That's why if you see the tax administration provision, the tax compliant, company, cooperative society, trust, they use the same tax admin. Okay, So they also need to submit return by end of 7 months from the close of account. So all of them take the same rule. Okay. Now the rest will be individual and all other person. So this is the one that we take residual, the rest of it. Okay. Now so individual and all others. Now, but really it's not so significant to us, because when we look at our study, we only come across cases of individual and company. Okay. And so far, we don't see examiner will best trust that bring in basis period and so on. Okay, so that's why left with only these two that become very prominent to us. Okay, now what difference do we see in the law? See, the law allows only 31st December year end. No choice. It's very simple. You can use 31st December year end. Now, because you can use 31st December year end, that's why your basis period is always the basis year. Okay, the basis period is always the basis year. So what's a basis year? Basis year is the period that ends 31st December. It's called a basis year. Now, but for company it's different. Okay, now you can use 31st December or even non 31st December year end. It's up to you. Okay, so you want to use 30th June, 31st May, just go ahead. Alright, so it's up to you. Now that's why, because you can have a choice of different year end, so now we need to see how would that affect the determination of your basis period. Alright, so we're going to see now for those cases, how do you determine? Now we look at cases of commencement first. Okay, cases of commencement. So if it's new, okay, if it's new, so let's say this is newly incorporated company that you're going to start. Now, so when you commence your business, now how do you determine the basis period for the company? Now we decide the rule in this way. We ask, first of all, what's the reason for the choice of your year end? Okay, so why have you chosen a particular year end, which either because of 21A5 or any other reason? There's not 21A5. Okay, now 21A5, okay, 21A5, it's due to one of these two. Either it's required by law. Okay, the year end is required by law that you must end on a certain date, or because you want to coincide with the group year end. Okay, so there's a sub-C that you newly incorporate. Then this sub-C, you're going to close the account as the same year end of the group. Now, that's all 21A5. Okay, any other reason, then we don't care what reason is that. If it's any other reason, then you must check. If your year end is 31st December, or you have made up an exact 12 months account. Okay, if your year end is 31st December, or you've made up an exact 12-month account. Your year end is not 31st December and is not having exactly 12 months. Now, this side and this side is very straightforward. As long as it's 21A5 or it's 31st December or exactly 12 months, we do not need to adjust, use accounting period as tax basis period. So there will be no additional adjustment involved. You just look at your accounting period and just use the same period. So the accounting period is the tax basis period. It's very, very straightforward. Okay. Now only when you are not 21A5, that you don't have December year end and you don't have exact 12-month account, now in that case you will need to adjust. Now how do you adjust your basis period? Now the basis period for the first year of assessment will always be from the date we start. So DOC is commencement, okay? So the date of commencement until 31st December of that year. Okay, so from the date you start until December of that year. So if you start in 2010, then you're going to close December 2010. You just follow the year you start, okay? Now, the basis period for the second year of assessment, you're going to see, okay? If you already have an exact 12-month account, use that. Else, it will be January to December of the second year. Now, so this is how you determine the basis period. That's the rule. Okay. Now, of course, from determining the period, it will then affect the tax cost, because you're going to see how much income you have and you need to apportion. Now, you look at page 360. We have 3 examples over here. Okay. See illustration 1. Now, says that Sweat Sandram Berhad commenced business on 1st April 2013. Okay. Now closes the first account to 31st December 2013. Now the account closed December 2013. Thereafter to 31st December each year. Now this is very simple. You see the period, the year end is December. So don't need to adjust it here. So if you ask me what will be the tax basis period for Sweat, now for year of assessment 2013, it will be from April to December. That's the date you start. That's the year end. Now this is also your accounting period, correct? Huh? This is also your accounting period. So your accounting period is the basis period. We are not adjusting. Why? Because you fall into this case. Okay. Now of course the following basis period will be December 14. Okay. Just follow your accounting period. This is the first case for Sweat. Now look at illustration 2. Okay. Now it says that Destroyer has commenced business on 1st May 2012 and then closed the first account to 31st January 2013. Now thereafter to 31st January each year. Okay, this time is not December and it's not 12 months. So we're going to use the steps that we see here. Okay. Now if you find it not familiar with the steps, then I would suggest what you do. You write down the accounting period. Okay, just write down the accounting period first. Now 1st of May until January, and then January, February until January 2014. Now that's your accounting period. Okay. Now we are writing down as a reference only. It's not your answer. This is just a reference for you. So you look at the accounting period to decide your tax basis period. Okay. Now what's your tax basis period over here. Now, from the date you start all the way to December of that year, which is 2012. The year you start is 12, okay? So you must go all the way until 2012, and that will be the basis period for Y2012. Okay? Now see, once you've got 1, 2, we know the next year of assessment is 1, 3. Okay? The next YA is 1, 3. Now how do you get 1, 3? You look back at your accounting period. Look back at your accounting period. Now look for the accounting period that suits YA 1, 3. So how do you know whether which one suits 1, 3? Now 1, 3 must end in 1, 3. So in that case, when I look at the accounting period, you know you must be looking at the first period, because the year is ending in 13, which is consistent with Y13. Now, the whole period that you see here, you must ask yourself, do you have exactly 12-month account? Which the answer is no. Okay? We don't have exactly 12 months. That's why they say, if you have, then you use that. If you don't have, then you start again from January to December. So that's the second basis period. Now, usually you only need to adjust for the first 2 years. Usually, okay? Now, the third year onwards, most of the time there's no issue, because once you come to the third year, you realize that the accounting period will now have exact 12 months. Now, 2014 is what I need. See, I'm looking at the second period, because this second period ends in 2014. And you notice this accounting period is exactly 12 months. So in this case, 1st February to January 14. Now, of course, this situation will give rise to overlapping period. That your accounts, so your basis period, if you notice, January till December 2013, whereas the third one is February till January 2014. So you can see nearly 11 months being overlapped. Now, once you have overlapping period, what do? We tax in the first period, and you will not tax in the second period. Okay, everything goes into the first period. That is the basis of what we deal with overlapping. Okay, now, see, look at last 3. We bring in the numbers. All right, we bring in the numbers. Now, Freshie has commenced business on 1st March 2012. Closes the first account on 31st October 2012, and thereafter to 31st October each year. Now, the business adjusted income has been prepared to be as follows. So they gave us the period ended 31st October 2012, the year ended 31st October 2013. Now, so that's the accounting period. Now, at the same time, they also tell us the adjusted income and loss. Now, these are the figure that they've given us. So at least we don't need to work out ourselves. They tell us, okay? Now, Freshie has a capital allowance of 10,000 for 2012 and 9,000 for 2013. And Freshie received frank net dividend 15,000 on 19 June 2012 and on 4th July 2013, and made 5,000 donation on 31st December 2012, and then 5,000 on 15 May 2013. Now, work out the tax liability. Assume Freshie is small company. Now, first of all, let's start here, okay? Now, if you look at the accounting period for Freshie, it's actually from 1st of March until October 2012, then 1st November till October 2013. Okay? Okay. So on the basis of this accounting period, now we work out what's the tax basis period. Now we need to do adjustment. So we will take from the date you commence until December of the year. So that year is 2012. So this is Y2012. Now we need Y2013. Now Y2013 is going to be accounting that ends in 2013. So if you look at the accounting period that ends in 2013 is the second period. Now this one you notice is exactly 12 months. So you do not need to adjust anymore. Straight away use that. 1st of November to October 2013. Now you still see overlapping, right? November to December, the 2 months overlap over here. Okay? Now see, you've got your tax basis period. Now how will this affect us in terms of the tax comp? Now Y12 and Y13. Now tax comp follow tax basis period. So this period is the period for 12. This is the period for 13. Okay, so tax comp follows the period. Now my business been told that 2012 I'm having an adjusted loss of 88,000. Now but 88,000 is until 31st October. You want until 31st December. You still need to add another 2 months. So the 2 months will come from where? Of course 2 months will come from this accounting. Correct, no? Because November, December is on the other accounts. So that's where you must take from this 180,000, take out the 2 months and put on top. So the figure that you're going to see here, if I show separately as a working, it will be a loss of 88 plus 2 times 2 over 12 times 180. It's still a loss. Okay, it's still a loss. So 2, 12, 180 is 30. So you still have a loss of 58,000 new. I just write a note here, 58. So you've been told that the capital allowance for 2012 is 10,000, which of course you can't absorb since you have no income. So the statutory income is nil. Okay, but that's the income for 2012. Now if you roughly look at the figures you see here, the first year itself is a loss. Okay, and you don't have any other income. Okay, you don't have any other income except dividend, which is deemed as total, that the dividend show at the bottom. So I'm very sure that this loss you have nowhere to utilize. So you're going to get an unabsorbed loss in the following year. So I'm just going to leave some space here for that purpose, because I know I will have an unabsorbed loss for the following year. So you just leave space here, a few lines. Okay. Now once you leave a few lines, then by right you should get to your, never mind, I write down. Okay. Now unabsorbed business loss brought forward. Okay. Now of course not for this year lah. Now then after that again net. Now after you get a net, you should bring in your investment income. But this investment income is dividend, and dividend is deemed as total. That means you're not going to show here. Can you see now? So the dividend is deemed as total. So what is left? That's your aggregate. That's only income you have here, so that's your aggregate. So nil. Now minus current year business loss, nil. Minus approved donation, maximum 10% of your aggregate. Now we said that he made a donation on 31st December 2012. Now this is the day that the period overlap. Agree, huh? Because you look back into a basis period, the overlapping is November until December. November until December. So there's a period that you overlap. So if the period you overlap, then I made a donation on 31st December 2012. Where should I claim the donation? Now everything goes to the first year. That's the rule. Okay? Everything goes to the first year. So if everything goes to the first year, that means the one that in December will be Y 2012. So the donation is claimed in 2012. So this donation, the donation on 31st December is claimed in 2012, which of course there's nothing for you to claim because you have no income. So it's a loss to you, okay? So this donation is a loss to you. Right, my total income is nil. Okay, my dividend statutory income. So the dividend is 15,000. So you got 15,000 net on 19 June and 4th July. So the one June will fall in Y2012. So CI is 20,000. Your tax rate 20%. So tax payable is 4,000. Now for the dividend that you're getting, you're gonna have section 110 set off, which is 5,000. So the tax repayable is 1K. Now that's what happened in 2012. Now 2013, the period that we have in 2013 is the same accounting period you have in the question, and the amount is 180. But this 180 has included the 2 months that you've assessed in 2012. So you have to take out that 2 months. So that 2 months is the 30,000. Follow? You take it out. So we only assess 150. Now the capital allowance for 2013 is 9,000. So in total become 19. That's 131. Now last year we had a loss of 58 that we can't utilize as we have no income. So you're going to bring forward to 13. So the 58 is reflected here. So 131 minus 58. So the net is 73. The aggregate is also 73. Now we've made a donation now 5,000. So you're going to claim the 5,000 for the donation made in May. The total income is 72. Dividend 20. 92. 20%. 18.4. 5,000 set off. TP 13.4. Okay. Now, so that's how the basis period, okay, affects us for those cases that you just commence. Alright. Now these are for new commencement. Okay, we're gonna see issue about if they change their accounting date. Okay, which is very common. Alright, very common. For example, like in acquisition. So in a group, I buy a new subsea. So usually a subsea year end is not the same as mine, so I'm going to change the year end. So once we change the year end, now how do you deal with the change of accounting date? Okay, now we're going to see the steps that if there's a change of accounting date, how do you determine the basis period? got some space here. Right. Now, if there is a change of accounting date, okay, there's a change of year end. Now, the rule on changing accounting date, if you realize, it's terbalik with commencement. Okay, so you're going to see the steps are similar, but it applies to different circumstances. Now, you must first check what was your original year end. Okay, to decide how to deal with the change, you must first check what was your original year end. Now, if originally your year end is 31st December, okay, or if your year end is not 31st December. Now, for cases that if your year end is not December, and when you change, you're gonna get something called failure year. Now, failure year is just a term. It's not to say that the year you fail or what. Okay, so it's just a term to describe that particular year. So failure year only occur because your year end is not 31st December and you fail to close to your normal accounting year end. So that year is called failure year. That's all. It's just a term to describe which year is that. Okay. Now, so what happens if my original year end is December and I start to change? Now, when you start to change, then you will have to apply the same treatment like this. See, just now when we commence, if your year end is not December, we need to adjust in this way. Now we know that if your year end is 31st December, but you're going to change to another year end, then you're going to use the same way also. So we need to adjust. So the basis period for the first year, now my first year is the year you change. The first means the year you change. The YA that you change is called your first year. Okay, so the basis period for the first year will be from January to December of that year. See, you're going to start all over again from January to December again. Okay. Now the basis period for the second year, if you have exact 12-month account, use it. Else, it will be January to December again of the second year. Now, see, I'm writing down the same steps compared with just now. So if you see together, then it's easier for you to remember. One is start, one is change. Okay. Now, it will be easier if your year end is not 31st December and you start to change. Okay, usually when you change, look at the effect of the change. Okay, look at the effect of the change. Now, if your change overlap 2 years, okay, if your change overlap 2 years, then just use the accounting period as tax basis period. So it will not involve any adjustment. Okay. If the change is within the same year, then use the current accounting period plus the next accounting period as your tax basis period. So this one, this year plus next year. If the change overlap 3 years, then you must take your accounting period, divide by 2 to determine the tax basis period. Now, that's the steps. Okay. So because syllabus is about change of accounting date, so make sure you remember the steps, which is more important, okay? Now you're going to see a few examples to show how to make use of these steps here. Now look at 360, illustration number 4. Okay. Now, look at number 4. Okay, action always closes its account to 30th June. So the original year end is not December. So if your original year end is not December, then you're going to use the rule that we say here. Follow, okay? Now on 1st July 2012, it has decided to change its year end to 31st October and then closes its account on 31st October 2013. Now, what do you mean by overlap 2 years, same year, or 3 year? Okay. If you see action, now I'll show you the one before they change first, okay, so that you can see originally. Now originally their year end is like this. That was the original year end, okay? Now the original year end is definitely not affecting your basis period. That's why if you ask me what is your basis period, obviously it will be the same as your year end, okay? Which is Y 2012. No problem, okay? Okay, we're gonna see now what happened after the change. So the company decided to change the year end so that they will close their account from 1st July 2012 until 31st October 2013. Meaning every sitting, every catch-up class also raining. Okay, because every sitting I'll tell the student, wow, luckily you are here. That's why you all don't need to get there. Okay, every sitting also like that. Okay, okay, all right. Now, so come back to this. So 1st July to 31st October. Okay, you see, this is the year you change. Now look at the year that you changed. From what year to which year? Which year to which year? Is 12. Just look at the year. The date not important. 12 to 13. 12 to 13. So this is overlap 2 years. That's what we meant by overlap 2 years. 12 to 13 is 2 years. So if you overlap 2 years, the treatment we say just now is what? You just use back your accounting period as basis period. So it's very simple. Don't need to adjust anything. So in that case, 1st July 2012 to October 2013 is the basis period for Y13. Of course, the following year, everything goes back to normal. Okay. Now, so that is the first example, the last form. Now, take a look at the last 5, blast. Okay, now blast as always closes its account to 30th April each year. And on 1st April 2012, it has decided to change its year end to 30th September. Then closes its account to 30th September. 2012. Now you see this time, see the original year end is 1st May 2011. Sorry, 1st May. On 1st May. Can change this? 1st May. Alright. Okay. Okay. So originally is 1st May to 30th April 2012. Okay. Now they change. So on 1st of May 2012, now they decided to change the year end to 30th September 2012. Now they tell you that they're going to close September 2012. Okay. You see now, if I look at my tax basis period, now the original one is not an issue, so that will be exactly the same with your accounting period. Now actually, if you look at the logic, then you know why the treatment is like that. See, once I've got 2012, the following year is 2013. Okay, the following year is 2013. Now for 2013, I need an accounting date that ends in 2013 to be the basis period. So if you go back to your accounting period, now the period that we have now is May 12 to September 12. If I take this and put here, then something wrong already, because this is ending in 2012, but the Y is Y 2013. So you can't match your year of assessment. So that's why the law tells us in that case, you just need to take your current period and you add it with the next period. Now this is the current period. So what you do now is you ask what's the next period. Now if you see the next period, it will be 1st of October to September 13. Now just take this and these two periods combined. So your basis period is 1st of May until September 13. Now you solve the problem. Okay, you have an accounting, so a tax basis period that ends in 2013. So you just add them together. Okay. Now, see last 6. See, Bones always closes its account to 31st December each year. Now on 1st January 2012, it has decided to change the year end to 30th September and then closes their account to 30th September 2012. Now this time you notice the year end is 31st December. Now, originally 1st of January 2011 to December 2011, then they decided to change in 2012. So in 2012 they changed from January to September. Now I just show one more accounting period. Okay, this is a change. Alright. Now if your original year end is 31st December, please don't call failure year. There's no failure year. Failure year only exists in those cases that you are not 31st December. Okay. Now, see, when you have this situation, now the original one is not affecting us, so I just put down the original one. Okay. So 1st of January to December. Okay. So year end is 31st December. When you change, the rule is from the date you change, you just close to December of that year. Follow? You will be January to December of that year. That's why 2012. Alright? Now, and then we need 2013. Now if you want 2013, the steps is look back into the accounting period that's ending in 2013 and ask, do you have exactly 12 months? So when I look back into the accounting period that ends in 2013, that's the one. And I see it's exactly 12 months, so I will use that as my tax basis period. And in this case, you notice overlapping occur. That's why earlier, when we talked about commencement, you will not get overlapping if your year end is December. But if you talk about change, you will not get overlapping if you are not 31st December. So it's terbalik, okay? So that's why you see the steps are all opposite, okay? Now, so this is what happened if your year end is December and you change. Now, say it lasts 7. So closing 31st December. And now we're going to change the year end to 28 February 2013. So we are changing the date to 28 February 2013. So Drake. See, originally it's the same. So now we change from January to February 2013. Okay. Now, this is my tax basis period before I change. So there's no issue here. Okay, that's the change. See, if year end is December, when you change, you always close back December 1st. So I'll still go back to 31st December. It's always like that, okay? Now, then what is the next basis period? Is Y13. And Y13, you look back into the accounting period and ask, do you have exactly 12 months? And notice here is not exactly 12 months. This is 14 months account. So when you don't have exactly 12 months, then you have to adjust the basis period one more time from January to December again. Okay, see, now I do twice. Just now I adjust one time, now I adjust 2 times. So I adjust again. Okay, now after adjust, I'll need basis period for 2014. Now basis period for 2014, 1st of March 13 to April 14, because I already have exact 12-month account. Okay. Right, so let's see, last 7. Now do one more, it lasts 8, then we get short break. Okay. Now Plaster as always closes their account to 31st May each year. Now on 1st June 2012, it is decided to change the year end to 28th February, and now closes their account to 28th of February 2014. Now this time again, your year end is not 31st December. Plaster. See, originally accounts is made up from 1st June 11 to May 2012. Now they're gonna change. See, when they change, they're changing from 1st June 2012 to 28 February 2014. Now, if you are not 31st December when you change, look at the year you change. from where to where? This is 12 to 14. Now 12 to 14 is 12, 13, 14. There are 3 years over there. So we call this as you overlap 3 years. Okay. This is your basis period for 2012. Now what's the basis period for 2013? Now the basis period for 2013, you're going to take this period that you see right now and you divide it by 2. So how many months we have here? So 2012, 7 plus 12 plus 2. Now we have 21 months. See, 21 is odd number. So if you divide, you're going to get what? 10 and a half, right? So you can't use 10 and a half months. So we will give the longer period first. So that means you will have 11 months and then 10 months. So the basis period will be 1st of June to 31st March. That's why 2013. 1st of April to 28th February. That's why 2014. Okay. Alright, so there's the steps on how you solve your basis period. Okay. Now we have the last 9 with numbers. The examiner says that besides determining, you must know how to determine the effect on apportioning your adjusted income. So that's why you might have some figure that you must divide. Okay. Now we take a short break. We come back. We see last 9. Okay. Now all the handout that I've written in the first term classes, I'm going to tabulate and collate nicely. Okay. So if you want to photostat the copy, you just go to 5th floor. Okay. Uncle there, I will pass to them. They will scan the copy. Then you just tell them you want P6. Then they'll photostat for you. Okay. So this is what I do for you. Okay. Then but I'm going to do now. So the earliest you can ask, I believe, is later dinner time. Okay, just let me arrange first. Okay, just take a short break. Come back, then we continue.